In this session, I'm going to talk to you about the cost of a product, all the costings that go into a product before we can get a final fee for what we might be able to sell our product for. So, there are lots of different fees that go into the manufacture of a product. So we have to look at the tooling, we have to look at time, materials, transportation, storage, lots and lots of different elements. But before we do that, I just had a little bit of research and I found something that I thought you'll find interesting. So I was looking for a little toolbox. I went onto Amazon, was having a little look around, saw this nice little 100-piece deco toolkit, and I thought, it looks a little bit expensive for what it is, but probably the tools are going to be quite good value, and they'll be quite useful. So I was just looking for something to keep in my hand, really, that I can move around, whether in the garage or with a car or in the house. So I thought £47.99, okay, must be really good quality tools in there. 100 different pieces, that's 48p each. So yeah, pretty good value. Me being me, I like to find a good deal on stuff. So I went to have another little look around and I spotted this on a website called Alibaba. Now, Alibaba is a wholesale website where you can buy things from China, often in high volume, and you can get them pretty darn cheap. So that actually looks fairly familiar, doesn't it? So put these two next to each other and let's have a game of spot the difference, shall we? So obviously the branding isn't on the $8 one from Alibaba, so $8 is around £6. However, most of the other things are the same. So even when you look at the little holes in the screwdrivers, so I'm looking for the little bits of detail to make me think these are the same. Two holes in the adjustable spanner. So yes, the yellow and the orange are slightly different colors. Yes, the brackets are on a different side, and actually when you look at the outside of these boxes, they do look a little bit different. So this is something I've seen before, whereby you can go to one of these manufacturers in China. You can tell them that I want to buy this toolbox that you've got for $8, but I want you to brand it and I want you to make some changes to it and I want you to make it just a little bit different to your normal product. That way it's individualized for me and I can sell the product on at a higher value. So immediately when you're looking at those two costs, the first thing you think of is, God, I'm going to get ripped off if I buy this on Amazon. But that's not always the case. Business is about making money, and if you can make money, then you've got a business. If you don't make money, you don't make profit, you don't have a business. It's as simple as that. So let's have a little look at the costs here. So for £6 each, if these products were the same and they come from the same place, it looks very much so that is the truth. In order to get them for £6 each, you have to buy over 5,000 in one go. That's going to set you back £30,000. So potentially you may borrow that money. You're going to have some interest to pay. The other thing is that you've got to ship all of those products from China, or from wherever in the world that you're sourcing these parts. That's going to cost a huge amount of money as well. And I would imagine for 5,000 sets of those toolkits, we're probably looking at another £5,000 at least, plus of delay. So if you're importing that much stuff from China, probably going to take about a month or so to get here because it will come on a big ship, a big container. Once it arrives in the UK, you're going to have to pay import tax. So they'll look at the value of the products that you've purchased and you'll have to pay VAT on those, or some form of import taxing. Then you're going to have to pay extra to get your products branded. So whether you do that in China or you do that in the UK, it doesn't matter. And making those differences, you will have an extra charge on top of each of those products. So even if that's an extra even if that's an extra £3 per product, our £30,000 is then £45,000. Then, of course, once it arrives in the UK, you've got to pay for transportation from the port, wherever it arrives, to wherever you want it to go. These products that we were just looking at was for sale on Amazon. So Amazon, you can have a warehouse that you can put your Amazon products in, and this is how they deliver stuff quickly through Prime. It's called FBA, and basically you'll give Amazon your products, you'll pay them a warehouse storage fee, they'll hold your products and then sell them via Prime. So it can work out very well if you've got products that sell quite a lot and quite quickly. If your products are slow sellers and you're not making much profit off it, then obviously that's going to eat into your profits. You've then got an Amazon sales fee, which is likely to be 15 to 20% of the sale price, and that's what Amazon used to pay for their marketing and their advertising, etc. You then have to pay VAT on your Amazon fees. Now, more often than not, that VAT will get charged to the customer, and therefore it doesn't make a massive impact, but sometimes you have to outlay VAT before you can get it back. Any profits that you make, any seller profits, you'll be taxed on. Any income, you'll be taxed on. So all of a sudden you can see how that £6 each may quite quickly jump up to 48. Now that is a big jump from 6 to 48, but the seller there may only be making £10 profit per product, which when you consider the substantial outlay, so let's say it's £45,000 for 5,000 of these, plus another £5,000 for shipping, plus let's say another £2,000 to get it into an Amazon warehouse, plus the money in the Amazon warehouse, he's not going to be making a huge amount, or she is not going to be making a huge amount of profit on that product. So this is the whole point of business. If you can get a product that's cheap and you can get it and sell it to your customers and there's still a profit margin, you're in business. If you can't do that, you're never going to have a business because you're going to lose money. So let's look at all the things that are in the cost of a product then, and then I want you to have in the back of your mind the fact that that toolkit without the branding from Alibaba costs £6. £6. So the company making that have got all of these costs that they've got to consider as well. So think about how they're going to make that for £6. So first of all, we've got development costs. I'm going to go through these one by one actually on the slide, so I'm just going to skip forward. So the first one is a development cost. This is the cost to get it designed and developed, and you will divide that by the expected volume of sales. Now this is a fixed cost because once you've designed and developed it, hopefully, although design and development is a continual process, most of the cost is going to be up front. So a little example down in the left hand corner of the slide then. So let's say we spent £100,000 designing and developing a product, and we estimate that we're going to have 8,000 products. That's going to equal around £12.50 each product. What happens if we sell more products than that? Well, that price will come down. The more we sell, the more we can divide those development costs by. Now, what some people will do is work out that development cost over a particular range of products. So let's say our 8,000, add all of those into the cost of the first 8,000. Any they sell after that 8,000, that value for development costs goes down to 0. So therefore you can make more profit. So the next one then is setup costs, and we were looking at this a little bit in the previous video where we were looking at the scale of manufacture. If you're going to mass manufacture anything, you're going to need specialist tooling, jigs, fixtures, molding, automation to keep the product cost down. So again, a little example here, and again, sorry, this is a fixed cost. Let's think about the toolbox. The bodywork for the toolbox would have been either blow molded or injection molded, probably blow molded, so it's thin walled and it's light. The tooling for that will cost a little bit of money. You know, we could be talking £20,000–30,000 just for the tooling for the casing. So having the tooling, makes the products quicker and cheaper and easier to make. So let's say we've got an outlay of £60,000 for specialist tools. Again, we'll divide that by our 8,000 parts, and that will end up being £7.50 in this example. Once again, we go over 8,000 parts, the tooling's already been paid for, so therefore we've got another big bit of profit coming in for each one. So the next one then is a material cost, and now this is a per batch cost. So a batch, we're talking about anything, whatever the batch size is that they're going to make. So let's say we're going to make these toolboxes in batches of 1,000. You would go and buy all the materials you would need for that batch at any one point, and then you could divide that across the amount of parts that you're going to make. So a little example I've got up here then is the materials for 1,000 parts cost £2,750. Therefore the material for each part within that batch is £2.75. So how can we reduce that quantity? How could we reduce the cost? Well, one easy way is to increase the batch size. So let's say we make 2,000 parts, but now because we're buying more material in bulk, our material cost will hopefully be less. Let's say the material cost then comes down to £5,000, but we're making 2,000 parts. So that will bring our costs down to around £2 each. So material cost is the cost of the raw materials plus anything that you're going to scrap during any subtractive processes, plus the cost of any purchased parts or components. So if you're using nuts and bolts within the assembly, then all of those will come into this material cost. Manufacturing costs, again, this is per batch. So however we're going to make, how many we'll make in a batch. So again, the example here, I've got 1,000 parts. So this is the cost of converting the raw materials into finished parts. This is going to include machine and labor cost and any packaging that you need as well. So anything to create the final product, okay, from raw material to final product, all of those costs go into the manufacturing costs. Again, this is per batch. So let's say our manufacturing costs are £5,000 and we're making 1,000 parts, that's £5 each. Again, if we increase our batch size, hopefully the manufacturing costs will come down because we haven't got as much setup costs for when we're setting the tooling, as we described in the previous video. So that could reduce that cost per part. The next cost is a storage cost. Now, in an ideal scenario, you'll be manufacturing parts with materials that arrive just when you need them, and then the ideal scenario is that as soon as that batch is finished, they're transported, they're out of the door, they're gone. However, that's not always the case, and if you're making bigger batch sizes than what you need to keep your other costs down, the cost per part down, then sometimes you may need to store parts, and that storage will always come at a cost. If you've got a big factory and you're paying for that factory, then you're going to be taking a small percentage of that cost of that factory to store your parts. Now, I've worked in an engineering environment where they would make bigger batches of virtually everything that they needed, but they ended up having to spend loads of extra money, and in fact they bought a whole separate building to store parts. Now, the downfall of that is that A, they've got this additional storage cost, but B, a lot of their products ended up being redundant before they even sold them. So they ended up spending money on materials, spending money on manufacturing, and then money on storing these parts, and ended up they couldn't sell them. So they had to end up scrapping a load of parts after they'd stored them for years. So the scrap value is nowhere near what they would have paid. So that's a massive loss of income and loss of capital money that they've got to spend because they've spent it in an area that they're never going to get it back. So the next one then is transportation costs, and this could be transportation from your factory to wherever they're going to go. So in our example of the toolbox, the transportation costs would actually have been passed on to the customer. So it would have been up to the customer, whoever was buying those products, to pay for those transportation costs. However, that's not always the case, and sometimes you have to consider the transportation costs to get them where they're going to actually be sold, to actually get them into the marketplace. So again, this will be done per batch. So let's say we're shipping 1,000 parts, and the 1,000 parts are going to cost us £800. That's around £1.34 per part. So we add that into our costing. Then we've got something called overheads. Now, if you've ever done any form of business management or business course, you would have seen lots of stuff about overheads. Now, I've put overheads as a fixed cost. However, it can be a variable cost. I don't want to get too much into that. So basically, the overheads are a share of all of the indirect costs associated with the company, but not directly with the product. So if we would need a factory, we would need to pay business rates, we'd need electricity and lighting, we'd need to market our products, we need to have a website, we need to do some advertising, we'll have to pay for staff, we'll have to pay for management, HR, payroll, cleaning and maintenance, health and safety, any other consumables, such as toilet rolls and cleaning fluids and tea and coffee. You all think that all this stuff has to be paid for from somewhere. So a little example over here on the left hand side then. So let's say our overheads for the whole company is around £8,000 per year. We're going to make 1,000 parts as part of this batch. So that is I'm just estimating here, we're going to say it's 1/600th of the capacity of the company. So what that means is that if we were just making these parts and we were just making them in batches of 1,000, we could make 600 of them for the whole company to be operating at its capacity. So what I've done then is taken the 8,000, we're going to divide it by 600 to get 1/600th, which is 1,334, and then I'm going to divide that against the amount of parts we've made in the batch, and that will work out around £1.34 each. Obviously the values I'm using here are just values, they don't mean anything, but I'm trying to get across to you the ethos of what this would be. So a company that costs £800,000 a year to run, yes, and you've got plenty of capacity to make other things and do other things at the same time. So the idea here is that if we can keep our overheads low, then the cost per part that we have to add on for overheads will be lower. Sorry, I'm just going to adjust myself because my knees are aching. So overheads then, I've put it as a fixed cost. It's not necessarily fixed because there are lots of variables within it, but we're going to assume it's fixed just for the purpose of the calculation that we've made. Okay, then we've got tax costs. So this is sales VAT, so value added tax, and currently in the UK it's at 20%. So you add that on per product. And then we have profit margin. So again, this is per product. Are you going to make 1% profit? Are you going to make 50% profit? If you want a really successful business, are you going to make 200% profit? Are you going to mark up your costs from what it's going to cost you to sell it, manufacture it and sell it? Are you going to mark it up? So this is the amount that the profit that the company will make. It's easy to increase your profit margin. You can either lower your costs or you can increase the price of the product. Obviously, if the price of the product goes up too high, then potentially you're not going to sell as many. So ideally in business, you want to find a product that's got a high profit margin and a low outlay at the beginning. Okay, and if you ever study business, you'll find out that there are lots of ways of doing that. Now we're going to look at a little costing example. So we're going to bring all of those costings together, and as you can see down the right hand side of the page, I've listed all the different costs. Now against that, I've listed kind of, I suppose, a targeted percentage. This isn't a hard and fast rule. It will vary from company to company and from product to product, but I just wanted to give you an example of roughly where you would break down the costs. The manufacturing cost should be the biggest, and I've put that down as 30%. And one of the next biggest is likely to be the overheads, and obviously if you can reduce any of those, then that's the best thing that you can do. So that's just a little example. So what we're going to do now is run through The examples that I put on the other pages in the little green boxes, I'm just going to bring that together into this little chart. So first off, we said then that our development costs were going to be around £12.50 each. So we can reduce that cost quite easily by putting less development time into the product. So it depends what the product is, obviously. It depends if we're copying other products that we've done. It depends whether we're making a massive leap in technology or in investment, or it's a brand new product that we've not looked at before. That cost will fluctuate, and obviously the lower we can keep it, the lower that cost is going to then be added into our final costing. So the second one then is the setup cost. This is for any fixtures or jigs or specialist tools, injection molds, all of that type of thing to help us manufacture our parts. Remember, this is a fixed cost and we divide it against the expected volume. So as long as we've got high volume, the fixed cost will come down per part. And the next one then is the material cost. So this is going to be per batch and we can work it out per part. So this is the cost of all the materials or consumables, all the other bits that we will need to actually be able to convert into our final product. The next one is the manufacture cost, and this will then be the cost of converting those raw materials into the final product plus packaging. Don't forget the packaging part on that, because it's not very often that you're going to make parts, and if it's going to be for sale, let's say you're going to sell it through retail, through Amazon, then you're going to have to package it, and you have to consider that. If you don't correctly package your parts, then you could end up having damaged components. However, if you're doing business to business and you're making widgets and you're selling them to another company, they're then going to assemble them, packaging will probably be less of a priority. Okay, so the manufacture cost is all the cost to convert the raw materials and components into the final product. That includes labour costs, so the cost of your workers, any consumables, anything else that's needed. Then we've got storage costs. Ideally, storage costs will be zero. That's unlikely to ever happen unless you've got a very, very well oiled machine and you're getting parts in and they're going straight out the door. Next one is transportation costs, and again we're just assuming with this cost that you're going to have to pay something towards the transportation. Again, in an ideal scenario, you may well be passing those costs on to your customer. Then we've got overhead costs, and this is then worked out from the entire overheads for the whole factory, from the whole operation, divided by a percentage, a fractional percentage of what the work per batch is taking off the company, and then we'll divide that by the batch volume. So again, this figure is very hard to get a precise figure, however it can be estimated fairly accurately. Any discrepancies in this will need to be soaked up by your profit margin. So some people have a very low profit margin, but then you've got very little room to wiggle for error. And if you start adding more costs into your company, you may soon find that your profits are very, very small, if at all. Now, I do know some other companies. I know of a particular company, a family-run company, whereby they like to have zero profit at the end of the year, so that the taxman doesn't take a cut of their profits as well, because you've got to obviously pay your taxman the tax that you're owed for any working profits that your company has. So a family-run company that I know likes to reinvest all of their profits just before the end of the tax year into new machinery for their factory. That can be a very good cycle, which means they've always got lots and lots of investment in new machinery, so they can do lots of new things. The problem they have is that they just don't utilize it. They have robotic welders, state-of-the-art laser cutting machines, CNC centers that cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, and they don't utilize them. But their thought process is that they'd rather spend the money in their factory than give it to the taxman. So it depends on how you want to run, whether the owners want to take some nice big chunks of money out of the company in profits, or whether you want to reinvest it back into the company. So the last couple of costs then So all of those costs, from the development cost down to the overheads, that's our manufacture cost, and that is £30.14 for whatever product this is. If we add a profit margin of 10%, that will be £3 and a penny for every £30 that we spend. And then we add VAT on top of that, which is going to be another £6.63. So we have our price, which is called the factory gate price, or the minimum sale price for us to meet our costs, overheads and profit, of £39.78 each. That does not mean that you can sell that product for £39.78. So I've then gone down and added all the percentages for each of those, and we can see quite clearly on this one that the biggest cost that we've got is actually in the development cost. So if I was looking at this as a business manager and an owner, for the next products, I'd be looking to see, right, how can we reduce those development costs? What can we do to make this cost cheaper? Because, you know, obviously it depends on the sale price that we're going to actually sell this product for and the quantities that we're going to sell. But if you can reduce that development cost, which is quite a huge cost on this product, then obviously you're going to be able to have your factory gate price a lot lower, and therefore potentially you could rise your profit margins. So adding on to that final cost, then potentially if you're a factory and you're mass producing these things, or you're producing these things, not necessarily mass producing, you're going to want to sell it to someone. So you're probably not going to be a retailer selling individual parts and products. You're going to probably sell in bulk products to a wholesaler. They will also want to profit after their overheads and their transport costs and their tax. So let's say that they want they're going to add £20 each. So out of that £20, their profit may only be £5 after their overheads, transport costs and their taxes. Then the wholesaler will then sell to a shop or an online retailer who will buy a smaller quantity off them than what they've purchased. They will then want to make a profit after their overheads and tax. So let's say, again, just to keep it nice and round, that's going to be £20 again. So we're going to have a recommended retail price of this product. It's going to be around £80. So our product that's cost us just under £40 to make, it's going to have a recommended retail price of £80. So just a reminder then that the aim of all business is to make profit, and without profit you have no business. In an ideal scenario, which you can get to nowadays, you can make profit on things that don't actually cost you any money. That's for a whole different course and a whole different level. And if you ever want to get into business and selling, then obviously you can go and research that. But that's not too important for us at this point. So how can the company sell this product for £6? So if we just look at the breakdown of costs, sorry, I'm just shuffling again. If we look at the breakdown of costs, where is that £6 going? Obviously, they've got specialist tools to be able to manufacture these parts and products. They've had to put time into development. The raw materials are going to cost some money. So how are they potentially making these products for £6 each? Well, in China, they have no VAT. So the Chinese government are very pro-business. The transportation costs are likely to be at the buyer's expense. Just added that in. I could talk a lot about the economics of China. Basically, the Chinese government will subsidize materials. They will subsidize business rates. They will, the price of living in China is very low, the cost of living, which means that they can pay less wages to their staff and have less benefits. And there's a lot of other ways that the Chinese government will help these companies, because a number of years ago they made the decision that they wanted to be the biggest commercial hub in the world. So at the moment they hold the monopoly on that. And it's some of the products that you can buy from China and get them shipped to the UK is for the cost of them, it's just astounding how they can actually make it. So I was just looking for a product that I could come in and show you. I bought a small, probably 8-inch football toy. So it was like a soft toy for my toddler from China, and it cost 48 pence. That included delivery from China. So manufactured and delivered to my front door for 48 pence. That was purchased off Amazon, so as well they would have had to pay some Amazon fees. The funny point I'd made with a group a few years back was that I wouldn't be able to post a letter from my next door neighbour to me first class, which I think was about 60p, or was 60p at the time. It would cost me more to post a letter from my next door neighbour to me than it was to have this product manufactured and sent over from China. So that's a little bit of an oddity in my head. I couldn't figure that out. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that route, and I'm waffling a little bit now. Let's get back into the content. So one of the tasks that I want you to do, and this is in your task sheet, is I want you to work out a rough costing to sell this toolbox for £6 using the percentages that I've given you. So there's a little bit of maths involved here. So hopefully you all know how to work out a percentage. So the easy way is to divide the cost. So divide the £6 by 100 and then multiply it by the percentage value. So the first one would be £6 divided by 100 times 31, and that will give you a costing here. Have a look at how low some of these costings are and the profit margins. Then I'd like you to consider how and why they would make those products for those types of profits that they're then making. Why is it useful for them, and why is the situation better for them than we would think of it as if we were making these in the UK? The next part of the task I want you to do then is to have a think about how you can reduce the cost of a product without lowering the quality. So we're going to look at all of those different points, and I've tried to mention some things throughout this video. I want you to try and identify ways that you can suitably reduce the costs without trying to lower the quality too much. Okay, and that's it for this session. So hopefully I've not waffled too much, only probably in the last slide or two, and hopefully that's been useful. So complete the worksheet and let me know how you get on.